Welcome to Risk Engineers Talk Governance. In this episode, due diligence engineers Richard Robinson and Gaye discuss the theme of this season, difficult conversations engineers need to have about risk. We hope you enjoy their chat. If you do, please give us a rating and subscribe on your favourite podcast platform. If you'd like more information on R2A's work or have any feedback or topic ideas, please head to our website r2a.com.au.
Hi, Rich.
Hi, Gaye.
Welcome to another podcast session.
It's good to be here.
Excellent. We're going to touch on the topic of this series, or the theme of this series, which is the difficult discussions that engineers need to have concerning the issue of risk or the subject of risk. And we have covered this sort of stuff in some of our earlier podcasts, but I think it's worth going back to that risk is multidimensional.
That's right. There's no one way to cut through the risk, whatever it is. It's a multidimensional thing, and depending on which technique or idea you use, you'll get different insight. And one of the problems with the word risk, it just covers such a big domain now, everyone's confused, which leads on to your little frustration just recently with a journo.
It does. So R2A was asked to provide some input into an article on risk management for Create. And so we gave them the stuff that we usually do and sort of pointed out that there were three different types of risk, but our focus is typically on safety risk and project risk.
And that's just actually downside risk, the risk in which there's no prospect of gain, as opposed to what commercial people like to do, which is the upside-downside risk. Risk and reward is usually the way that's formulated, and which gives rise to the risk appetite statements, which we've mentioned earlier.
And after that, and the article was sort of drafted, it came back from the editorial that it wanted to be more of a focus on getting past risk-adverse responses to enable innovative change. And I found this really interesting and a little bit disappointing, I guess, from an engineering viewpoint, because that's typically not what engineers do in their day-to-day business. For me, that's more about an entrepreneurship, looking at what ideas you can do in innovation and, overcoming some of the risk issues. So risk of that, in that sense, is a byproduct.
Yeah, that's right. So the risk-reward profile. We're just talking about it sort of just before the session to try and explain what we're talking about here. But it's a bit like, the example I gave. If you're building a bridge, you don't put the site officers under the bridge. Despite the belief of the engineers, the bridge will not fall down during construction, which is what happened in Westgate, and crush the people in the huts below. And also the engineers were on the bridge that went down with it. They didn't believe it was going to fall, and all the calculations and all the evidence you would have asked them said, no, the bridge is going to stay up, but you just avoid avoidable risk if you can.
Yeah.
Versus the situation with driving cars around. Everybody knows that driving cars, relatively speaking, is quite a dangerous thing to do, but the benefits we get from driving cars are so great that we all decide that we're going to keep doing it.
Hopefully by abiding all the rules.
Well, yes, and as new innovations come in, for example, self-drive cars, the old thing was, if you drink and drive, you're a bloody idiot. Well, once the car will take you home, you don't worry about it. It's not a problem.
So innovation
is good. So it depends what you're trying to achieve. So we're not against the innovation and risk management, but part of our problem is we keep coming across people who keep talking about risk solely as this upside risk and reward thing without realising the zero harm, which is basically what most engineers do most of the time, I have to say. It's got to be safe. And safe doesn't mean free from all risk. Safe means that the balance, the value you get from it, outweighs the disbenefits.
That's correct. And I think, by encouraging that risk appetite model and being risk adverse, or, encouraging not getting responses back that are not risk adverse, it's sort of missing that aspect. And it was sort of evident when we did the course for the Engineers Australia Chartered Assessors, and their view on things was only between 1% and 3% of engineers interviewed as part of that, and chartered status, and risk is a component of that, understood that the WHS, or work health and safety legislation, was actually relevant to their job.
Yeah, because it's as we were just sort of commenting, people keep talking about risk assessments, but what the legislation demands is risk design assessments. And that you've been diligent in all the design options. It doesn't mean free from all risk. It just means in the circumstances you've demonstrated diligently that every reasonable practical control is in place.
So I think the innovation comes in, first of all, you've got to understand what your problem is. And often the innovation is in the solution to that problem.
Correct.
And so there's this balance then to work it up about, well, what are the benefits that you get, but you can't do it if safety is compromised.
Correct.
If it's prohibitively dangerous, that solution or innovation cannot be implemented.
That's correct, until you figure out a way around that prohibitively dangerous aspect, which may well require innovation in itself. That's why, I mean, it's like, necessity is the heart of innovation and things like that. I mean, it's a bit like watching the Ukrainians fighting a war. They have been innovative because they had no choice. And if you talk about risk assessments and things like that, innovation, overcoming the problems, well, they've got a lot of problems, and
they're trying to work out which are the best options to go
and they're
forward.
working on the same option with regard to the US politics at the moment, which has got enormously complicated.
Just bringing it back to an engineering example, I guess. And you've seen innovation over time. You think about 30 years ago, 50 years ago in underground mining.
Yep.
Somebody had to go out underground, let off the charge when they were pretty
Well, I
close
had to drill
to
the
the
holes,
soil.
charge the holes, fire the holes, muck it out, and do it all again. The air league miner. Never saw a plump air league miner in my life.
And then technology progressed that the charges could be
Done.
filled and everything and then let off, above the site. And now it's all done remotely, is my understanding, at a
Perth Airport's a popular place.
operations centre remote from the mine location. So
Okay.
that's technology that's overcome some of these safety issues.
Well, it's like the personal pilotage unit for marine pilots, which trains could consider. It's like the low voltage power everything and LED lightings in roof spaces, which we've talked about. These are all innovations which will save lives. They're good ways to do things, and I imagine it's faster, cheaper, and more economic too.
So it's not that R2A and Rich and I are saying, don't do some of this innovation stuff, but you can't encourage this as the only way to do risk management.
Correct.
And I think some of the discussions at Engineers Australia, and even in the title of their conference for 2025, it's turning risk into opportunities. Now, you can't turn all risk into opportunities if you understand all the different risk types.
But that doesn't mean to say when you look at it, you won't consider all the options and test which in the circumstances makes the most sense. And I think that's where we get a bit frustrated, is that by making it all opportunity and in effect saying that anybody who's sort of into safety risk is just an obstruction, that doesn't make sense. It just doesn't make sense. You have to consider all those aspects.
It's a non-negotiable safety. And we see it being pushed down. And, sometimes some of the solutions that are put in place are to the safety detriment of other people.
Correct. And, well, that's the court case actually involved at the moment, which we perhaps won't talk too much about. But the question of neighbourly exposure to the hazards, it's good for the business, but not necessarily good for everybody else.
So when you're considering safety, not only do you have to consider your own workers, but you have to consider the other people that are affected by it. And I think that's, where Richard and I come from majority of the time.
Yeah. We could go back and re-describe this again, I guess, but I think the key point is it's this multi-dimension thing. Don't just choose one technique, because if you do, and particularly if you ignore the WH's legislation requirements, you're going to set yourself up for a pretty serious fall.
Or other people up for a fall as well.
Yeah.
Don't not consider the innovation and the benefits of risk and opportunity, but forefront should be safety and the consideration of that. So thanks for joining us today. Short and sweet today, but thank you. And I feel better now. Thanks, Richard.
A pleasure, Gaye.